Hi everybody, I'm Josh. Still takes a lot of getting used to being called doctor. Ronnie, do you have that problem? No?
You wouldn't talk about it.
Yeah. So, I am by trade a data scientist, which is a little bit different than information security. However, I have a lot of background in that. So I've worked for a lot of years with the Air Force and different government agencies and things. But I like to put a data twist on everything. So it's amazing how much data gets leaked out there and with people's private information. And if you get bored someday, and you can just ask me and I'll tell you what things you can search in Google to find people's like social security numbers and credit card numbers and all sorts of fun stuff, all nicely encoded and open for everyone to see. So, this is part of a multi-year effort, and I know the title of the talk was Bluewhale Challenge Investigation, What Your Mobile Device Knows About You, but it's more like what it's telling the world about you. All right, there are a lot of presentations and a lot of research that's been done on how much information your phone or your laptop or whatever is scraping up about you and storing, but there's not a lot out there on how normal users like you can, accidentally find personal information about people on the internet and how their devices lead you to all sorts of conclusions about the individual. So I figured we would talk about that in the context of the Bluewhale Challenge. Anybody familiar with the Bluewhale Challenge? Anybody at all? No? Well, you guys aren't as socially cool. You're not as hip. All right.
Too old to be cool.
Come on, I'm older than you guys for the most part. I should know this. You should know this. All right. The Bluewhale Challenge is. Oh, that's me. Nobody cares. All right. All right. The Bluewhale Challenge, the serious part of this, is that it is an online suicide game where you go through a series of challenges of self-harm until eventually you commit suicide. Now you got to be thinking to yourself, one, who would play this game? And more importantly, who would make this game, right? So you guys can probably guess where games like this most likely come from, like where they start online. Things like Reddit, 4chan, stuff like that, right? This one started on Vkante, which is VK. It's the social network for Russia. All right, it's kind of like Russia's version of Facebook. And when I say it's like Facebook, I really mean it's like Facebook. Like they scraped the original Facebook before there was bot protection, stole their API, and then recreated it to the point where in the API the calls still say things like Facebook. Right? Yeah. All right, and there are millions of users. There's 499 million Vkante users around the world, mostly in Russia though. So this thing started on there back in 2013, I'm sorry. And in 2016, a lot of government agencies started to figure out that this thing existed. It wasn't a big problem here because it was in Russian, right? But eventually, like all things, it got translated and people started doing it here, which is a problem. So it's spread at this point. It's on Facebook and Instagram and all that sort of stuff. Right? There's all sorts of YouTube videos about this thing. They're all fake. There's all sorts of news articles about people who maybe were involved with it or maybe weren't. And there's a lot of kind of indefinite information out there that doesn't really give you a lot of insight into it. So back in 2017, early 2017, a gentleman on Reddit translated the rules, the secret hidden rules. Now to get to the secret hidden rules, you had to go to a portal page with a guy with his hoodie up, and he's all dark, and they've got like creepy music playing in the background, and you have to click on him and you have to agree to never tell the big secret. Right? So somebody clicked on it, of course, and then translated it, posted it up for everybody to see. Man, they violated the rules of the game, right? So there's a lot of references in there of all sorts of different things like 420 and hurting yourself and watching scary movies and all sorts of kind of stupid things, right? But again, we got to take it seriously because clearly people are going to do this and they may self-harm. So at this point, I was asked by, we're going to call it a group, okay, to look into this. So those of you who know me know I work with a lot of different government agencies, law enforcement agencies, local police, federal police, foreign police departments, all sorts of stuff. And this group said, hey, what the hell is this? Why are my kids posting about it, the head of this group? And look into it and tell me what you can tell. Oh, and by the way, can you do it really fast? Like, it's Friday. Can you tell me on Monday? That'd be nice. And of course, then you have to go back and say, no, that's not really possible. You have to be businessy. So, first thing, I don't speak Russian. Anybody had me in a class? No? Nobody's had me in a class? You've had me in a class? Yes? No? All right. So, I don't speak Russian. I barely speak English. All right. I'm from Western New York. All right. A little more country. So, I can't speak English, and you can't translate most of what's on VK. So, when you go to the developer pages and you're looking for things like API keys, I can't read the stuff to know what to click on to make my own API key. So I thought to myself, all right, why don't I just go find some API keys? Can't be that hard, right? This one Python library says that it's something to the effect of API key, blah, blah, blah. So I said, all right, I'll put that into GitHub, and I'll click on the code tab, and I'll see if anybody else has leaked their API keys out there. Sure enough, 262,000 results there. So it was pretty easy. It took like 5 minutes to find about 40 API keys that were valid and good with people's logins for their VK accounts. So now I can scrape their pages. It makes it a lot easier. Anybody ever done this? You know how easy it is? So if you're on GitHub and you're bored, hang on. I'm going to go over here. Okay, click that. You're on GitHub, you're bored, you go up here, you search for something like API key, and you might get something like this, like Google key equals AI ZAS. That's the start of all Amazon Web Services keys. And as you can see here in nice clear text, here's a couple thousand Google Amazon Web Services keys. Remember, those are the full keys. You don't need the person's username or password. You can just go and take those keys and have full control of their websites. So, you guys have heard all the news lately about all these breaches of different data services and different hosting things. There was that company in Rochester that was doing hosting for a bunch of payroll companies, and they lost all their information. Yeah, they had it all stored on Amazon Web Services, and there were like 5 GitHub repositories with their key in it. So it was really, hacking into it when they just do a search for the login credentials. Right? So be careful when you're uploading this stuff. Remember that if you accidentally upload your keys and then you keep the repository and just update it with no keys, that the history still has your keys in it. Right? That's definitely still a problem. All right, so I was asked to look at this, and realistically, it can't be done over a weekend. You got to spend a little bit more time. So I spent 7 days. Figure, how hard can it be, right? It's just a world problem. So we pulled 66 billion, I pulled 66 billion posts from around the world: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Tumblr, VK, dozens of different sites. And I just used those hashtags because they were kind of the commonly known hashtags associated with this game. And from there branched out. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, how's that even possible to pull that much stuff in, a matter of 7 days? Well, first of all, I have a 10 gigabit internet connection, so that helps. All right? You're probably not going to do this on your cable modem. And secondly, I have 22,000 plus thread GPUs that I can assign to doing all of this stuff. So having a lot of hardware helps. All right? But you can do this on a smaller scale. So for instance, 4.8 million posts related to the hashtag #IamWhale. Right? So these are people saying that they're participating in the game. Right? And that's just one site that we looked at. Right? So there's a lot of bad stuff going on here. We're collecting a lot of things. But the next thing we realized was there's got to be like a game creator. Right? Like any game, there must be somebody who's in charge of the game, and probably a lot of people in charge of it. So we thought, okay, let's figure out who this is. And we started seeing references to the term curator. And so we realized that curator is the name of the admin, essentially, or the group of admins. So we thought, if I was a curator and I wanted to do a horrible thing, where would I go? I probably wouldn't post things on Twitter or use a Facebook channel. That'd be stupid. Right? So I'd probably set up some darknet forum somewhere. So we thought, all right, well, let's just take all of our crawlers and API subscribers and everything. Let's just point them at Tor and see what they find. Right? We already have a fingerprint of keywords and hashtags and all sorts of weird stuff. So we'll just connect to Tor and go out and do that. So we did. Did we maybe bottleneck Tor for a lot of people? Probably. Did we eat up most of the bandwidth on Tor for a little while? Yes. All right. Did some nodes crash? Probably. Oh well. All right, so our curators all kind of coalesced on one central site, one darknet forum that was known for things like pedophilia and drug sales and weapon sales and all sorts of stuff. It had a nice little sub forum in there for this Bluewhale challenge, where all these curators like to hang out. So that's cool. We find this place that they're all talking and doing stuff. But what do we know about them? They're all using handles like Curator 1 and 2, very original handles, right? And we get a lot of pictures and we get a lot of posts and all sorts of stuff, but we don't really know who they are. So we thought, all right, let's analyze who they are. So we started to gather metadata. Everybody familiar with metadata? Yes? Okay. Anybody know what the word meta means? Not real data, right? So it's not real data. It's one of those stupid acronyms, right? So we said, all right, let's look at this. Let's look at the images. Let's look at the data that's within the images. Let's look at the posts themselves and figure out what they tell us about what's going on. And then take all that and we'll give it to the FBI and Department of State and Secret Service and all these law enforcement agencies and everything else. So, what can you tell about some picture or something else? So I grabbed Jake's picture off the college website here. I didn't want to embarrass anybody from their Twitter accounts or anything else. So I figured, college website, right? Jake probably didn't post that picture. Somebody else took it and posted it for him, right? Well, that's somebody else, and understand there's another 52 lines of data here that you can't see, just from the first few lines of data. So let's look at this. They're running Adobe Photoshop CS5 for Windows, right? And then in red, I highlighted there the fact that they're also running Windows XP Service Pack 2. That's bad, Jake. I don't know when this picture was uploaded, but you probably shouldn't have your media department using Windows XP computers. It's just a thought, right? This got worse, by the way. I just went to Google Images and I put in Jake, Hackathon, Ronnie, Hackathon, looked for things on Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that, started getting things like their telephone versions, OS versions, other apps installed, things like that. Geo-coordinates out of the actual images themselves of where they were taken in the buildings. Yeah, so there's a lot of bad stuff here that you can pull out of this. And yet, it gets a little worse. We can look at the posts too. We don't have to just look at the images, but we can look at the posts themselves and how they're created. So for instance, on Twitter, okay, this is just Twitter. Every time you guys post a little 140 character post, you post around 120 kilobytes of data. That's 80 named entities, including not only your coordinates, if you've got that information on, but the entire cell site octagonal region that you're within on all the coordinates of the octagon. Right? So that means that if you guys go into your Twitter app, like I got Twitter on my iPhone, right? And I go in and I say, you may not share my location. So it doesn't share my location. It shares the cell site that I'm on's location. Right? Because Twitter wants to know that stuff. They need to sell it to advertisers. Right? So, geolocation, it's low. It's only about 16 to 30% of every post on the internet has some form of geocoordinates on it. Okay? IARPA, which is a branch of DARPA, actually has methods all outlined very nice and cleanly on their website, 8 methods for pulling all of these different coordinate systems out and identifying where a person is based on what they write and how they're writing. Okay? The user agent's always on, so we always know what browser a person's using, unless they're spoofing it, obviously. We know the OS version. It's usually 70 to 80% of the sites tell us exactly what OS they're running, and also other pieces of software that's running. So if you run TweetDeck on your Windows PC, TweetDeck will tell the version of Microsoft Office what your home username is, how long your password that's hashed is, what your IP address is, what your workgroup number is, and how many open network shares there are on your local network. Fun stuff. So, we get IP addresses and last known sites. Did you know that when you guys go to Twitter through the web interface and you post a tweet, that it posts also in your tweet the last web page that you were on? That gets especially interesting, by the way.
I'm glad I don't.
Right? I'm tweeting to my mom, I'm good, everything's great at college. And the last site you were on, remember that last site? Yeah. I like to write little Python scripts and just watch people's last sites. Just watch it stream down the screen. It's really fun. All right. So we have hundreds of other entities. Twitter has over 80. Facebook has over 100. Snapchat, Instagram, these all have hundreds and hundreds of entities. In fact, on the top 40 most used social networks, there are over 800 different fields that are shared about your personal device or computer to all these different social networks. So if we know you're on Facebook and you're on Twitter and you're on Google, we can look at all of those and we can learn a huge amount of information about your device and exactly where you are and who you are. And there are a lot of other cool things, like when you post on Facebook, hidden in your post is all the other social networks that your computer's currently logged into and all your usernames. Yeah. So that's what a post looks like, by the way. That's just one post. Okay. Lots of cool stuff in there. I don't know if you can tell. Down here it's very small. I assume the screen would be way bigger. No. This right here, this is the cellular grid that this post was made in. That's the corners of the cell site that the post was taken. Right. So it's very easy to figure this stuff out. All right, so going back to the serious part of all of this. In June and in July, we had 2 arrests, sort of kind of based on this information. I'm not allowed to actually say that, so okay, just make your own assumptions. And, these guys were weirdos. All right, and a whole bunch of other people have been identified as being part of it, and a whole bunch of people have been identified as kind of victims of it as well. And we're working with groups all over the country to try to track these people down and figure all of this sort of stuff out. So, this is kind of the end of a really humongous effort that we were doing on bot detection on social networks. Some of these sites, like Twitter, actually run our bot detection algorithms. So this allowed us to kind of work a little bit on something a little different for a while. Right now we're working on this thing called the dirty Sprite and syrup culture. Anybody familiar with that? Nobody wanted to admit the last one, so nobody's still, okay. All right, if you don't know what that is, good. All right, so I'm going to leave you with, the DoD proverb here. If you see something, say something, right? So if you see somebody who's doing this sort of stuff, say something to someone, because believe it or not, I know this is it comes as a shock to most people. When you tell people, they tend to go tell other people, and those other people will go out and find people to deal with the problem if they can't themselves, right? I'm not going to go over to Russia and knock on a guy's door and say, hey, you're doing bad things, I'm going to arrest you. But I can very easily pick up a phone and call somebody and tell them to go do that, right? And so can you. Right? It's not hard. So don't focus on small problems. You don't have to. You can focus on problems that are, affect everybody. Don't sit there and say, when I grow up, I'm going to be the guy that protects this one little company from getting malware in their systems. That's a good job. There's nothing wrong with that. However, you could think, maybe when I'm older, instead, I'm going to come up with a way that solves the problem of this specific botnet for the entire world. Right? Why help just one small group when you can help everybody? That's all I got. I don't know where Jake went. There he is.
All right, any questions for Dr. White?
Was I loud enough?
You were.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much.